Shalom, shalom, Yisrael, Yehompam we here once again on what they call the 27th of February 2022. Amy Grant, y'all remember that back in the day, a little more modern than the other offerings I gave with Cleveland and Crouch. So we are finally at our last Kahalot. This is Kahalot Hashiba Laodica. I know you hear people saying Laodicea, but it's Laodica. And this is the assembly in apostasy. Total apostasy. And we are at T-48 for Pesach. I still have not officially given the official date here on Yahweh for Christians. But right now, generally, it's T-48. Now, we are, remember now, and just a quick review, Ephesus is what started us out. This is the loveless assembly. And because of their lovelessness of Yahweh, they were eroded eventually by the Nicolaitan Doctrine. The Nicolaitan Doctrine is a predecessor of today's Christian doctrine. Then you have Smyrna, who was the most persecuted of the assemblies, and this is because they separated themselves from the world. So they stood out. Unlike these other assemblies, they stood out and they were heavily persecuted. They started out by taking their jobs and they went from there. And everything that happened in Smyrna, they blamed it on this sect. They call it a sect. Yet they were very faithful. Now then we had Pergamum, who is significant for compromise. And they imploded with the Balaam Doctrine. Balaam Doctrine preceded the Nicolaitan Doctrine. And this is what finally brought them down, in spite of the warning from a Malak himself. Remember, Yahweh is dictating to Yochanan these 7 letters. He is dictating these 7 letters to Yochanan, and then they are taken to the actual assemblies by a Malak, the Malak who's represented that assembly. Can you imagine going to worship and a Malak comes in at the pulpit, moves your preacher aside, and delivers this letter? That's amazing. That's how important this is. And next we had Thyatira, who succumbed via corruption, letting in Jezebel. Jezebel is the signature marker for the Thyatira spirit. Jezebel. And I gave you the history of Jezebel, which started in the Garden of Eden. The world's first drag queen was Hasatan, inside of a female serpent. Hasatan was inside of a female serpent. The world's first drag queen. Then we had Sardis. Sardis was the world's first mega church, if you will. Huge assembly in Sardis. And they succumbed, of course, because of their, again, it's kind of like not having the love of Yahweh. Then we have Philadelphia, who is the epitome of love for Yahweh, and they're the only ones who will escape persecution and the trials that's going on in these latter days. Of course, Yahweh ended every letter with the Hebraism, "He that has an ear, let him hear." Now, those who overcome, in each assembly, there are those who did overcome. Everyone did not just totally give in to whatever faith they was in. And I'm hoping the same for those who now. We're all in one of these various assemblies, except for the Philadelphia assembly. There's no one out here under the sound of this microphone who are in the Philadelphia assembly. We're going to talk about that when we go into Daniel Revelations. But this is a precursor to the 144,000. And the others, we have us in these other faiths. And if we overcome in faithfulness and repent and hold fast and watch, look for your bridegroom. You say you love him, then every day we should be looking for him. Every day he should be on our hearts and our minds. We should go to sleep thinking about him, and we should wake up thinking about our bridegroom. And what do we get? He says he gives us the right to eat from the tree of life, life eternal. We give him a new name, power over the nations, and he's going to don us with white garments. This is his righteousness instead of our own self-righteousness. Here's the thing. How can an eternal mind get a created mind, which is limited, to understand it by giving the limited mind, which is us, everything that's created, something that we do know? This is why Yahweh instituted families. He instituted a husband and a wife with children, and they are to operate on the revelation of Yahweh from their home. See, it's just no different than you see an ant colony, and you know the next day there's going to be some construction and they're going to pave over this area. There's no way with your mind that you can communicate that to the ants that they are all about to die. Every last one they're about to be paved over in cement. And how could you get them to understand that information is not from a lack on your part? It's just because it's two different types of creations, and one cannot communicate with the other. You have to become an ant to get them to understand. You would have to step down. And what Yahweh does is he steps down so we can understand. We all understand husband, wife, children, home, pet dog. Yahweh reveals himself, his love of us through his son. And his son came through a Kodesh relationship. He could not come through filth and dirt. He came out of love. Miriam loved Yahweh, and that's what he came. She was pure. And he came out the seed of the woman, like he said in the Garden of Eden, not the seed of the man, of the woman. That is the one that's going to crush Hasatan's head. Now, let's go ahead and read Revelations. The book is Golab, but you call it Revelations. Revelation 3:14 through 22, about the Laodicea assembly. Revelations 3, verses 14 through 22. This is Yahweh speaking. And to the Malach of the Hakalot of the Laodicean write, these things says the Amen, the faithful and the true witness, the beginning of the creation of Elohim. I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I could wish you were cold or hot. So then, because you are lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will vomit you out of my mouth. Because you say, I am rich, have become wealthy, and have need of nothing, and do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire, that you may be rich, and white garments, that you may be clothed, and the shame of your nakedness may not be revealed. And anoint your eyes with salve, that you may see. As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Therefore be zealous and repent. Look, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come to him and dine with him, and he with me. To him who overcomes, I will grant to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. And of course he ends it with, he who has an ear, let him hear what Ruach HaKodesh has to say to the assemblies. Now, of course, I'm going to have to give you the backdrop, because in each one of these letters, Yahweh introduced himself in a tailored manner for that assembly, and everything that he speaks about, you're going to understand it better when I give you understand the history of these areas where these assemblies came from. But before doing that, let's examine these things that Yahweh said. In 2 Peter 2, 18 to 22. 2 Peter 2, 18 through 22. This is about the perverting of Christian liberty. 2 Peter 2, 18 to 22. And it reads, for they speak great swelling words of emptiness. They allure through the lust of the flesh, through lewdness, the ones who have actually escaped from those who live in error. While they promise them liberty They themselves are slaves of corruption, for by whom a person is overcome, by him also he is brought into bondage. For if after they had escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of the sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach, they are again entangled in them, and overcome, the latter end is worse than that of the beginning. Because if it would have been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness, than having known it, to turn from the Kodesh commandments delivered to them. Going on down to the final verse. And it has happened to them according to the true proverb, a dog returns to his own vomit, and a sow having washed to her wallowing in the mire. Now here at Yahweh for Christians, I've cautioned us to realize where your ideology is. And this is what Peter, you call him Peter, is telling us of how this insidious doctrine crept into the true faith, which we'll call the Nazarenes, which is a sect, they said, of the Iudain, of Hebraism, that these people did believe. But then they apostatized, and they brought others out, and it was worse for them now than it was before. Even better for them never to have accepted Yahushua HaMashiach. This is what we're going to find with this assembly, Laodicea. Those who have gone to complete apostasy against the one who they first loved, who they first claimed that they loved. Luke 8. Luke 8. Luke 8, I'm going to read verses 6, 7, 13, and 14. And this is the parable of the sword. And starting at 6 and then 7. And it reads, and this is Yahushua himself talking about this, the sower who sowed the seeds. Some fell on rock, and as soon as it sprang up, it withered away because it lacked moisture. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up with it and choked it. Now let's go down to 13 and 14. But the ones on the rock, this is Yahushua explaining, the ones on the rock are those who, when they hear, receive the word with joy. And these have no root, who believe for a while, and in time of temptations they fell away. Now the ones that fell among the thorns are those who, when they have heard, go out and are choked with cares, riches, and pleasures of life, and bring no fruit to maturity. Here again, this fits this assembly in Laodicea. They indeed received it, but they didn't, and they sprang up in the receiving of it, of the knowledge of the Besor, which you call the gospel. Grew up, sprang up strong, but it withered because it did not grow down in the roots. The second group, they grew up strong, but with them came thorns, which is they did not leave away from the love of the world. They came in with Yahushua, accepted them, but they did not leave off the things that they came from. They brought those things with them. They brought those old faith, the old beliefs, their old religions, their old ways into the party. And this is what Yahushua is against. He is, remember, we're talking about unleavened bread coming up. I just had a beautiful time with my wife and our daughters at a brunch smorgasbord, and it's wonderful. You can get grits, and you can get pancakes made, and waffles, and fresh omelet made. You can get fajitas, different things you're not even gonna really have. Yet you can have fried fish and chicken, all kinds of things. And the dessert line is wonderful. It's great. You're not gonna come there and just eat pancakes. It's great to have choices and a big smorgasbord. Not when it comes to salvation. If that's the case, Yahushua could have stayed right where he was in Hashemayim, next to his father. There's no need for him to come down here if everybody can get in doing anything they wanted to do. There is one way. Yahweh Echad. Yahweh is one. There's only one way. That's not me saying it. That's him saying it. He did not offer us a smorgasbord. Let's remain in the book of Luke. Let's go over to chapter 14. And we're going to read verses 25 through 33. And what we're going to talk about here is how the discipleship is tested. Now, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother and wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life, also he cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not bear my burden and come after me cannot be my disciple. Which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? Lest after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who sees it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going to war against another king, does not sit down first and consider whether he is able to, with 10,000, to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of shalom. So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. That's not me saying it. Yahweh Shua is saying, listen, I gave my all. I did not hold back. Yahweh gave his all. He gave his only begotten son. There was nothing more that Yahweh could do than what he did do. But you're going to go ahead and give him one day of the week? You're going to go and get rid of half of your dirty ways? Are you going to go ahead and give him partial? Or are we supposed to give him all? Now, best. This is what he is saying we do. And this is what the Laodicean assembly did. They gave Yahweh Shua what was left, what the remainder was of their time, their efforts, their talents, their gifts. Let's remain in Luke. Let's go over 3 more chapters. Luke 17, 11 through 19. And that sounds harsh to some people when he says, even deny your own flesh, your own family, your own self, if that's what it takes. That's not what the plan is. Yahweh instituted the home. Yahweh instituted the home built on the foundation of him. Because there are a lot of homes out there. 2 women, 2 men, man and 2 women or 3 women. There's all different kind of ways to build a home. But there's only one, and they're all founded on sand. There's only one way. Yahweh Shua is the rock that the living water came out, the stumbling stone for those who are offended in him, but a foundation, a sure foundation for those who believe on him, love him, and keep his mitzvot. Yahweh Shua established the home, so he is not against the home. He's for a home that's established on him. And we're going to give you another scripture on that one. But let's first read Luke 17, 11 through 19. And it reads, now it happened as he went to Jerusalem, he passed through the midst of Samaria and Galilee. Then as he entered a certain village, there met him 10 men who were lepers, who stood afar off, and they lifted up their voices and said, Yahweh Shua, Master, have Hasid on us. So when he saw them, he said to them, go, show yourselves to the Gabal. Show yourself to the priest. And so it was that as they went, they were cleansed. Now, what does that show you right there? That they just heard him tell them to go. Without any proof, they all went. They went in faith in the word of Yahweh Shua. But then when he saw that he was healed, one of them, he returned with a loud voice and honored Yahweh and fell down on his face at his feet, giving him thanks and TORAH. And he was a Samaritan. See, noted that he was a Samaritan. Now think about it. The priests don't want to hear what Samaritan. They ain't going to let Samaritan in the temple in the first place. This is Samaritans, an outsider as far as they're concerned, someone they consider less than them. Yet this is the only one that came back and gave homage in a loud voice to Yahweh. So then Yahweh Shua says, were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? Were there not any found who returned to give honor to Yahweh except this foreigner? Arise, go your way, your faith has made you well. The other 9 Hebrews, they're Hebrews, because the only one that was pointed out was the foreigner. That Yahweh Shua says, you're a foreigner. He's a Samaritan, sent there by the Assyrians hundreds of years ago. And by the Assyrian king hundreds of years ago. And we find that the other 9 went back. The thing about leprosy is a physical manifestation of secret hidden sins. This comes from sins that people think they're getting away with, and it shows out on the skin. Okay, so these people, when a person gets leprosy, this is from hidden secret sins. Now they're healed. They can go back into Israel, and with that thinking of just rushing on and not acknowledging, hey, this was a miracle from the Most High Yah, they're going to go back and live their lives. Yes, just like those coming out of Mizraim, who were healed looking at the serpent, but did not get into the Kodesh land. Yeah, they were healed, but they were not saved. They were healed looking at the serpent, but they were not saved. They did not go into the Holy Land. These 9 lepers were healed, but they were not saved. See, there's a 2-part process. There's acceptance and obedience. The only one came back, a foreigner, a Samaritan, and gave homage. This man was not going to live no more in his heart with a leprous life. Those other 9 can continue and would continue living their lives, which caused them to get leprous in the first place. See, here's the thing. I'm not going to go through it, but in sticking into this book of Luke, powerful book, 8:21, Yahweh says, you know who my mother is? Because they were coming to get him, his mother and his brothers, because he was being inundated by so many people all around him. Yahweh was the pop star at that time. Everybody trying to get a piece of him. And his mother wanted to so-called rescue him from this. Yahweh says, my mother and my brother and my sisters are he who does the will of the word of my Father. That's who they are. He said his family are those who hears and obeys his word. And that's not coming from me. That's coming from the man. The man who we say we love. When we say we love him, we profess it, we confess it, then we must do it. It's a 2-part process, Loadicea. You don't receive it, accept it, and confess it, and then don't do it. Because when you don't do it, you end up in full apostasy. So now let's give a background on this town. It was founded by Antiochus II, who named it after his wife whom he loved, Laodice. He loved her. He built the town and named it after her in 261 BC. But he abandoned his wife. He abandoned his love. He abandoned her to marry an Egyptian princess named Berenice. Now we know how there was a political decision to do that. We know how the kings did it back then to unite lands so they wouldn't have war. Now, in doing this, it didn't work, by the way, but I'm not going to go there. But he did marry an Egyptian princess for political reasons, abandoning the woman he loved, which this town was named after. It was a booming town, very rich town, had a booming economy. They specialized in textiles, and particularly a special black wool textile that only they could really make. And if you wanted this special kind of wool linen made, you had to go to this town to get it. They in fact were the banking center of the whole region of all these 7 Kahalot. Now we know Sardis was in the town of Sardis, we talked about them, how they invented the mint. They invented minting coins for currency. That was invented in Sardis. But this town had to do everything bigger and better. They minted their own coins with the face of Zeus on it, whereas in Sardis they would use the local king or whoever was in charge at that time. But in Laodicea, they minted all their coins with the face of Zeus. So this is the king of all the gods. And it became the actual banking center for the entire region of Asia Minor. Now, the typical wealthy family here had art collections in their homes. This is the first place where people actually collected art in their homes. And Laodicea was renowned for its medical school, which had a great invention of eye salve that worked. People would come from far and wide to come get this eye salve that they concocted here in Laodicea. Now, this town was so wealthy that, remember we talked about that earthquake in 17 AD that rocked the assembly, all of Philadelphia, and then Rome gave them freedom from paying taxes for about 5 years so they can build Philadelphia back up. Well, that same earthquake also rocked Laodicea, but them being so wealthy told Caesar, hey, we don't need your money. We're going to build this town up by ourselves, and we're going to still pay our taxes. And they did. They were built 3-4 times quicker, rebuilt than Philadelphia, on their own money. Continued to pay their taxes and kept it moving. This is how wealthy they are. We don't need you, Caesar. Now, in 200 BC, Antiochus the Great moved into Laodicea 2,000 wealthy Hebrew families from Babylon. He let them go, and he sent them down to, specifically to Laodicea. 2,000 Hebrew families. And over the course of time, 20 pounds of gold per year was sent, which is today would be like over $500,000, was sent for the synagogue in Jerusalem. So they would donate, and this was the largest influx of money for the temple in Jerusalem, was from this group here in Laodicea. You know, Shaul would often went around collecting money for the poor in Jerusalem. The biggest benefactors for the synagogue in Jerusalem, for the temple in Jerusalem, was from the wealthy families in Laodicea. So that shows you how wealthy these people are. Now remember, in this Besor message, once the resurrection of Yahushua HaMashiach and the leaving of Ruach HaKodesh on the 120, and then the sharing of the Besor, for the first about 15 years, if you read in the book of Acts, for the first 15 years, all of the converts of this so-called sect were all Hebrews. And some Pharisees, of course, also converted. But these are all so-called Jewish people that converted. There was no foreigners in this conversion story for the first 15 years. So we have in this assembly here in Laodicea, a very strong contingency of Hebrews and wealthy. Now, this place, they got complacent. They got complacent in their wealth, so much so that Shaul had concerns for them as well when he wrote his letter to the Colossians. Now, Colossia is not too far from Laodicea. Let me read a passage in Colossians. Go to Colossians 4:16 to tell you what I mean here. Now, this is Shaul writing a letter to the Colossians. And it reads, "Now, when this epistle is read among you, see that it is read also to the assembly of the Laodiceans, and that you likewise read the epistle from the Laodiceans." So there's another letter out there that we don't have, that Shaul wrote to them, that we don't have this in the KJV. But the point is, he has strong concerns for this assembly. Even then, he wrote that letter from prison. And matter of fact, 4 times Shaul in the letter to the Colossians mentions the assembly in Laodicea. 4 times he mentions them. So this shows that the original fathers had a lot of concern for the assembly in Laodicea, who was just comfortable like a toad in warm water with their wealth, and just comfortable in their relationship with Yahushua, which was not as warm as the water. Now, let's talk about that water. Because though it was a very good place to live, they had poor water quality. Very tepid and full of minerals. In fact, they would pipe water from Colossia. Because Colossia got their water from the mountains. They had their good old, Deer Park water. They got their water from the mountains. Nice, fresh, and cool. So, Laodiceans would try to pump water, and they get water from Colossia. So they did have a relationship. Now, to the north, you had Hierapolis, which was not that far, and they were known for their hot springs. Today, that area is called Pamukkale, and this water is called like Pamukkale water. Very healing and healthy hot water with healing minerals and nutrients in the water naturally. Now, so you have Colossia to the south, and then to the north you have Hierapolis, and right in the middle, lukewarm Laodicea. Now you see why Yahweh introduced himself as he did and said the things that he said? Lukewarm. Matter of fact, the water was sickening. Yahweh says, you make me holy. Holy is the Hebrew word for sick. He said, you make me sick. Maybe this is where we got cholera from and the word holy from that we use in English. We probably came from here. But Yahweh was saying, you have plenty, and you say you don't even need me. Now, immediately that reminds me, that takes me to Deuteronomy. Let's go ahead and go to Deuteronomy 8 and 10 through 12. 8 and 10 through 12. Yahweh was saying, you know what? You're rich, you got everything. You don't need me, huh? Right? And it reads, when you have eaten, this is Moshe speaking, talking to the children of Israel before they enter to the Holy Land. When you have eaten and are full, then you will bless Yahweh, your mighty one, because for the good land which he has given you. Beware that you do not forget Yahweh, your Elohim, by not keeping his commandments, his judgments, and his statutes, which I commanded you today. Let me skip on down to, okay, he says, let me go, keep reading. Lest when you have eaten and are full and have built beautiful houses and live in them, and I'm going to skip all the way down to 17, then you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand has gained this wealth for me. And you will remember Yahweh, your Elohim, because it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day. Then it will be, if you by any means forget Yahweh, your Elohim, and follow other gods, and serve them and worship them, I testify against you this day that you will surely perish. As the nations which Yahweh destroys before you, so you will perish, because you would not be obedient to the voice of Yahweh, your mighty one. Why? From getting fat and forgetful. And to this day, there is no trace of the Hebrew assembly in this area. None. Because they did indeed say, we have what we need and we don't need you anymore. See, they loved the gift more than the giver. They failed the Abraham test. Abraham was told to sacrifice Isaac, who was the son of the promise. I mean, you're talking about waiting over half a century for this, and now you're telling me to sacrifice my son? In the land of Canaan, and he's amongst the Canaanites, the chief evidence of them having faith in their gods was to sacrifice their firstborn son. That's what the Canaanites did. So now Abraham is in the midst of the Canaanites, supposed to be separate from them. He's being told by Yahweh to sacrifice his firstborn. And we know how the story went. Abraham passed the test. Now remember, when Yahweh is doing the test, it's not for him to know. It's no different than your teacher giving you a test. The teacher already knows the answer to the questions. The teacher's giving you the test for you to see where your deficits are, where your weaknesses are, where your shortcomings are. So Abraham passed the test. He didn't have no shortnesses or weaknesses in his love for Yahweh, because he was coming across his son's throat with the knife. He was coming across, his arm was coming across to slit the throat before the Malak stopped him. But here we have the Laodiceans who received the gift, received the promises, the fat and the wealth and the beauty of faithfulness and obedience, and then forgot Yahweh. They forgot him. And so Yahweh is saying, why can't you be fresh and refreshing like the Colossians with that cool water? Or, and listen, why can't you be healing and warm and healing and nutritious like Hierapolis water? But no, you make me holy. You make me sick. I can't even take you in. I can't even drink this. Can't even drink you because you make me sick. Be hot or be cold. Be nutritious and nurturing or be refreshing and rewarding. Don't be holy. Don't be sick. See, they had everything, smelling themselves. Here's a town that had not one but two theaters. Now we know all of these assemblies had their own theater. It's just like no different than today. Every last city in America has a stadium, at least one stadium. You have a stadium. We do what we do in them. We have these. We have the Olympics. Whatever we have. But this one had to have two. The only one that has two. There's 40,000 citizens in this town, in this city, and that's a good number. But Ephesus, 200,000, and they only had one stadium. But everything had to be bigger and better in Laodicea. That's why they had to be the banking center. They had to outdo Sardis. They had to have two theaters. They had to outdo the Ephesonians. They had to and rebuild their own town. They had to outdo the Philadelphians. No, we don't need no help from Rome. Don't give us no money. As a matter of fact, we're going to keep paying our taxes. They had to outdo everyone else. They had to be the head of the show. Top number one. And this is what caused them to fall. Now, one of the things, and we see how Yahweh says, I come to the door and knock. And then he talks about inviting them in and eat and sup with me. Now, in this region, and the way it was back then, really, dinner was a social time. It was time for fellowship, and it was not just go ahead and eat something quick out of the microwave and sit down and watch TV. No, dinner time was a social gathering that lasted for hours. And as a matter of fact, people back then didn't eat breakfast and lunch and dinner like so many of us do here. Dinner time was basically like the meal of the day, the one meal of the day. And it was a social gathering event. And here we see that Yahweh says, you know what? I'm at the door knocking. At first, I was at the table with you. You accepted me. You had me, you enjoyed with me. We laughed and talked together and we broke bread together. Now look at me. I'm out on the front porch, on the door, knocking. Knocking. Now you have put me out. That's supposed to be the object of your desire. You have forgotten me. And you're inside enjoying life. Isn't that what many of us are doing now? How many out there who believe in Yahweh HaMashiach are going hungry? How many of you out there are homeless? How many out there don't have something to wear? Even if you don't have a job, you getting checks up, you getting money. You're not hungry. You're not holding out signs asking for money. You're not knocking on doors asking for food. You're not doing those things. We indeed are fat and rich and wealthy and not realizing it. Because we don't understand what wealth is. We don't understand what being rich is. You're comfortable. You're not worrying about, if you're hungry, it's because you're fasting right now. You're not worrying about where your next meal is going to come from. You're not worrying about whether you have clothes to put on because it's going to snow tomorrow. You're not worrying about whether you have a place to lay your head down. You're not worried about these things. Even if you don't have all that you want, you have all that you need. Comfortable. Is Yahweh outside your door knocking? Is he asking to come in? He said to see the thing about Yahweh, his identity and his claims that he makes on himself, they are exclusive. Like I said, it's not like the beautiful smorgasbord my wife and our daughters enjoyed this morning. It's not like that. a bevy of choices. Oh, I got Zeus over here, Artemis over here, Dagon over there. Oh, a little Yahweh on the side. He's not like that. Remember, Yahweh Shua is building a home. He is giving the revelation of himself through his son, through the family. And it's no different than a man coming home, not expecting to see another man in his bedroom, or a wife coming home, not expecting to see another woman in her bedroom. You do not accept that, not as a chaste Kodesh believer. Why should Yahweh Shua expect someone else in his covenant bed with you? His offer is open to anyone who receive him. He said, anyone who receive him, like he said in Luke 8:21, that's who my mother is, that's who my family is, who receive me and do asa, do the work, do the words of his the works of his word. Now, talking about this Nicolaitan Doctrine, which is the same as the Balaam Doctrine, except it is more of an affront. We talked about it in the past. Jude spoke strongly against it. Peter spoke strongly against it. Paul spoke strongly against this doctrine, which began in the true assembly with Nicholas. And he is the father of the Nicolaitan Doctrine. And from here, eventually you get your Catholic doctrine, which of course from there you get your Christian doctrine, and you're now your 3,000 plus offshoots of doctrine from this one supposedly monolithic faith. My wife and I were in the Holy Land, and you hear, was it 5 times a day, the prayers going up all over Israel, the Islamic prayers going up. You have the Catholic sector, you got the Christian sector, you got the Islamic sector, and you got the Jewish sector. All are there in the Holy Land. All the thing that separated Yahweh Shua from all the religions was monotheism. Abraham, the Hebrew, he is the one that defied the world by being the first believer in one Elohim. In the story, you can read it in Jasher. Yahweh chose him. Yahweh chose him. He says, this man would follow me and teach his children to do so. Because all the world believed in a creator, but they segmented him for the crops, for the water, for the fields, for the animals, for fertility, for this, for that, for different things. They segmented. All those things is no different than you loving somebody, but just, seeing them for their beautiful hands, or their beautiful buttocks, or whatever, the beautiful eyes, the beautiful hair. Would you want somebody to just love you for different portions of you, to objectify you like that? Yahweh is not to be objectified. And that's what too often people do. They see a man or woman and objectify them. The chest, the arms, the muscles, the this, the that, different things. And what polytheism does is it objectifies Yahweh, where he says he is all of everything. All these things. He created all these things. There's no one thing that can identify him. Yahweh Shua is he created all of everything. So Abraham, he chose to make his family through Abraham to reveal himself as the creator, the only begotten. The Egyptian Pharaoh, he says he is the only begetter of the begotten. This is why Yahweh Shua chose that spot to begin his covenant relationship with Israel, to show to the world, because the Egyptians claimed that their Pharaoh was the only begotten of the begetter. That's how they termed it. The Yahweh is not a smorgasbord. Yahweh Echad, he is one. And this birthed this ministry of Yahweh for Christians, because what the Christians not realizing is that he believes in monotheism, but he has adopted the doctrine of the Nicolaitan and the Balaam doctrines, which destroy the family from without and from within. And she's not realizing that. So she's calling on the object of her desire with pagan and adulterous and harlotous names. Yahweh has one name. And because you've accepted so many other names, you have gone in to other doctrines that likewise do not support truth, such as Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving and New Year's Day and on and on and on. Sunday worship, using the fish to identify you, which comes from Dagon, using the cross, which is a curse, which curses whatever it is on. These things come about because of the little drip that break a little leaven that leavens the whole lump. What we had in Israel is Pharisees, which comes from Esau. The Romans set Esau over us because they knew that Esau would not try to succeed from Rome. You can read that in Luke 11:48. So I don't even know if I want to go there, but they were concerned about losing their position if they continued to let Yahweh Shua live. Yahweh Shua was going around doing miracles and teaching the people with power and authority that they did not have. And they were losing their power. And they sought to keep that power because they could not do miracles. Oh, they can do some magic, but they could not do miracles. Yahushua was healing the sick, giving sight to the blind, raising people from the dead. Who wouldn't follow after that? So they sought to kill him. Now, on the outside, Rome, they don't know who's who. All Rome cares about is Pax Romana. That means the peace of Rome. Israel, because of this rich history from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob to Moses, was afforded to keep their faith, to continue worshiping in the temple on Shabbat, to do their sacrifices the way they wanted to do it, and to do whatever they want to do with their bodies, their circumcision, as long as they paid their taxes. They didn't care. See, historically, Israel was always given this right from the Assyrians. We saw how they repopulated Samaria. To the Babylonians, the Assyrians, they all did the same. They let Israel come back. They would mix some of the people, but they let them worship as they wanted to. There were some challenges, and even the Greeks. Yes, they wanted to convert, and they ended up doing getting the Septuagint written from Hebrew to Greek, and we are thankful for that, however. But Israel, because it was an ancient religion from Abraham, before these other religions, they were allowed to continue in their way. Now on the outside, there were sects, and there were many of them. Yet the Gnosticism was huge, which is why Shaul in prison wrote the letter to Colossians, because they were being infiltrated with Gnosticism. Which also the Laodiceans were being infiltrated with Gnosticism. But then you had zealots out there who wanted to succeed from Rome and were always stirring up insurrection. The two that died on the opposite of Yahushua were two zealots. You had the Essenes, the Mithrites. Over the course of the first couple of centuries, you had hundreds of offshoots from the original Besorah message, which is why our forefathers wrote so many letters trying to catch it from the beginning. All of this is trying to stop what we have today. Very few people out there call themselves Hebrews, calling on the name of Yahweh, and a whole world calling on God It doesn't matter which religion you are. You can have 10 different faiths. Mormon, Buddhist, Taoist, Zion, Christian, Catholic, Islam, Confucius. Put them all in the room together and say, okay, tell me about your God. Use the word God. Every last one of them can start talking about their God. Because when you say God, a different picture comes in each mind of each different faith, each different religion. God is so generic and so watered down, it fits any religion on earth. Yahweh is no God. See, reason why Smyrna was persecuted so much is because they separated themselves. They did not identify with those around them. The Philadelphians were persecuted. They did not identify with those around them. The other 5 assemblies were not persecuted. There is no persecution amongst the others. Why? Because they co-opted with Jezebelian doctrine, Nicolaitan doctrine, the doctrine of Balaam, or the doctrine of Gnosticism. Those were the early ones. And they all, to this day, are the seeds of Catholicism and Christianity. Those doctrines are modern day Catholicism and Christianity. This is why Yahweh for Christians exists. Because it's trying to get you to come back to Yahweh Shua HaMashiach, whom you say you love, but you call him by another name. You call him by another name that he never called himself. Let's do a little pretend that may help you understand better. Let's pretend right now Shaul, who you call Paul, is on this microphone right now. And he had you call in. See, he's talking about Yahweh Shua, who spoke to him directly several times, and he even says in Hebrew. You read the narrative in Acts that he shared that narrative twice. And then he even went to heaven, to the third heaven. And he says specifically that Yahweh Shua spoke to him in Hebrew. I even gave you 2 websites from 2 Greeks who are from Greece, who speak Greek, and who teach their language. And they say, out of their own mouths, I gave you the website, I gave you the connection to them. They teach Greek, they speak Greek. They say they don't have the SH sound in their language. They have 3 different letters that can give you the S sound. None of them can give you the SH sound. Yahweh Shua was, and if anyone could say Yahweh Shua back then, it is because they had Ruach HaKodesh. But then people today are saying it's speaking in tongues. Speaking in tongues is not what that was. Is that they could say Yahweh Shua, they was touched by Ruach HaKodesh. Because naturally they could not say Yahweh Shua. They could not say the sh part. So they could say it, that means the Ruach HaKodesh was on them. Now, speaking in tongues is if you was able to go to another country that was not your native language and speak their language. That's what speaking in tongues was. But what manifested that they had received the love of Yahweh Shua was they able to say his name. It all comes down to that. Do you love Yahweh Shua or not? I gave you the history of the letter J, which did not come by until around 1526. So that means no one in the ancient world, not just in Greece, not just in all throughout the kingdom of Rome, but even over to the Far East, Japan, China, nowhere on the planet was anybody using the letter J during this time, during this writing, during the New Testament era. Not for 1,500 years after the resurrection of Yahweh Shua HaMashiach. I gave you the resources, and I gave you the history of that letter J. So that means they couldn't have called him Jesus. And if they had Ruach HaKodesh, they could call him Yahweh Shua. It all boils down to something that simple. And isn't it a shame that we can't do something that simple, yet some people want to chastise Mother Hawa? It was simple in the Garden of Eden as well. You eat from that tree, you don't eat from this one. See how it comes in full circle? You think I'm making it simple and dumbing it down and making it trite? No, I'm not. I'm taking you back to the Garden of Eden. Yahweh gave them two things. The KISS method. Keep it simple, saints. You eat from this tree and you don't eat from that one. It's that simple. And we failed. We failed. And here we are today in so-called 2022, the 27th of February, of failing on a simple test. Simple. He's either Yahweh Shua or he's not. Come on. You can start. He's either Yahweh Shua or he's not. There is nothing else. He's either Yahweh Shua or he's not. You either eat from the tree of life or you eat from the tree of TORAH. The tree of Chai or TORAH? Which one? Next week, we're going to go into Daniel Revelations. Eschatology is to Yahweh's seed and no one else. And once you know that, then you won't be confused as to what's going on in the last days. Shalom Aleichem. Peace be on you. Yahweh Christian. Shalom Aleichem.